G'day, this is Jack out the back. Join me today as I fix up the four-wheel drive on the cruiser and get up to another couple of little jobs around the place. So before I get stuck into tearing her apart, I'm going to just show you a couple of things around the cruiser, just what I carry with me, make sure that I get through the day and don't have to do a lot of running back. So I've got to fix up the four-wheel drive because of the rain that we've had lately. A couple of weeks ago I redid the hub seals on it because she was leaking, so it's good to tidy that up. But when I was taking it apart, my selectors had come apart, springs had gone in them, so she can't engage four-wheel drive. So I ordered new parts and they were here pretty quickly. So jumping inside the cruiser, I've got a new dash mat in here, so it's a decent parcel shelf so I can store some stuff in there, rifle, ammo, that sort of stuff. At the moment I've also got my two-way radio, so if you come out of the vehicle you've got those comms there as a backup. Some electrolytes, Panadol, a UE boom. Thinking of moving away from the UE boom because the charging port's different to everything else that I have. In my glove box I've got myself some more electrolytes, a charger for the drone, a cleaning kit for the rifle, and some lube for the rifle. Now, one of the things that really keeps me going out here is having really good communications. So I've got a Starlink unit mounted up on her. At the moment, I've got my unmodified one. So she's just tech screwed on up here because the other one's on the cruiser that we take to town still. This works perfectly fine though. So back here I've got an inverter and I've got the Starlink router and then just a Victron charger and a secondary battery. So it means that I can have it running and not run the main battery down. That system also powers the angle. So if we're doing vet work we can have our vet products in there, and I've got water or cool drinks in there, so if you're feeling a little bit faded during the day you can get a bit of a sugar hit. We've got a rescue swag first aid kit, which you never want to have to use, but it's good to have it easily accessible. You don't have to dig behind the seat, under the seat or anything. Nice and bright, everyone can see it and access it. 2 spare tyres of the MRF make, which are nice and tough, but also they make it rough. Bit more water, a shovel because you never know, survey peg for just tossing in if there is anything of interest. If I'm going out on a job where I know I need them, I'll pack more, and some survey tape. Got an extra bit of water, a sat phone for if you're going dismount, toolbox which is reasonably well equipped. I've got my ammo tin so I can take it in and out of the car easily at the end of the day so it can get secured. A whole bunch of spare gloves, a screwdriver set, a moulded kit for impact sockets, a bit of soap so you don't have to scrub your hands in the dirt like I did the other day, electrical tape, coil wrap, some anti-seize, some Gatorade so you've actually got sugar instead of the sugar-free stuff, ear muffs, spray lube, alligator, naturally a tape measure, tech screws, various sizes, and Phillips head screws with a tech bit so they you can use them for mounting up flush equipment, grinder, drill, saw. Saw is good for comms work because if you've got something interrupting your line of sight you can just jump out there and quickly zap it off, or if there's a tree over a track you can just buzz it off. Spirit level and a hacksaw because sometimes batteries don't always work, and a knife so we can cut up some camel steaks. And downstairs I've got a various mix of electrical equipment for most of our work is electrical. Yeah, that kind of sums up the way the cruiser's geared up. She's a 2003, so she's got a bit of age about it. She's an ex-underground vehicle, so it's got that extra ventilation up the top there, and you've got a fair bit of rust throughout the body, but the engine is smooth. The maintenance on it was really good. So we'll get stuck into these hubs and see if I can make a mess of things. One of the things that I forgot to point out is the solar system on the roof. So that's just two 100-watt panels. What they were is surplus to requirement, because as I've been doing more with my wireless network, I've been finding what sizes I actually need to have. So it has a little bit of a negative effect. You want to park your car somewhere nice and shady so it's cool to get into, but my aircon doesn't work anyway and the windows don't work either. So you need to park out in the sun to make sure that you've got cold water and stores in your angle. So I want to get everything up to a stable working height. And it always goes without saying, you want to use something like jack stands when you're working under something or next to something, because you don't want anything crushing you. Now I wear gloves pretty much for everything I do, because I don't like the idea of crushing and cutting my fingers, because if I damage myself, there's no one else to do the work. And just that downtime, you can't afford it for something that is as affordable as a pair of gloves, to make life just that little bit easier. Right, so our circlets also come off the end of our axle shaft, so that's not ideal. Now I've just got to undo these 14 mils, and they've got conical washers on them, so what it takes to get them out, if they don't just pop out like that, is a little bit of a tap with a hammer. And it's always good to have something like a flathead screwdriver so you can release it on that bit there. Alright, so to release these little cones, just find myself a nice little hammer, grab a flat blader from somewhere like here, and just pops out like that. Now I've got a little bit of movement, and that's where I can get my flat blader in there and just get him out. So when I put them in, I try to make sure that I line them up so I can get the screwdriver onto them. Alright, looks like we're good. Now because that circlip already came off, we're all the way off. So that's our hub, and there's our little selector. So we'll pop over to a nice collection of stuff courtesy of eBay. Now it's pretty convenient for us to be able to jump online and order parts and get them delivered. The mail run is a 1500 kilometer circuit, and it gets done every week unless there's a holiday. It should be a nice job to put it back together. We're going to have to undo these 10 mils and put him back in. But when we take this apart, you'll see the spring and the parts that are different to that unit. You can see that we've got the spring there for our selector. Now I'm going to pop up here and grab a bit of anti-seize, which makes life a lot easier when you're putting everything back together. Now just make sure we don't get any hub leaks, and put a little bit of this paste on just to seal anything up in the gasket that could potentially not line up and seal properly. Right, so then onto the torque. Sorry, 36 Newton meters is what we're going for. So there's our 20, 30, just shy of 40. Reset. You can see our conical washers are swiveling around as we go. Right, so now our challenge is our circlip. I'm going to get him on there, so we'll get a bolt, pull that out, push our circlip on using our flat blader and a little pair of pliers. Right, let's watch me fumble for a good couple of minutes, trying to get this right in position. Alright, we're in. She's not slipping out, so that's good. This has already got enough grease on the selector, and it's got its gasket there. So we just line him up into the correct position. And it does have a correct position. Right, so she's back in position. And we're going to slip out a little bit of anti-seize on everything here. Right, so they're firm, they're done up. Those conical washers are in the position that they're not going to come out too easily, and we're just going to feel that. And you can hear it engaging and disengaging. So if we pop round to our other side that we haven't done yet, and that one's got the spring and assembly all busted up, we can see we've got a bit of a leak there. That has no movement. So just going to wire brush this, give it a little bit of a tidy up, and then we'll take this one off and do the same thing. Straight swap replacement. Equipment, because even though I do have some spares around the place, I'm not a 15 or 20 minute drive from Super Cheap Auto. Right, so once I've done them all up, I do another run around just to make sure that they are seated and I haven't missed anything in my spiral. Right, so they're good to go. Now we've got to put our circlip back in. So I grab my trusty little bolt, screw him in, pop him back out, get our circlip and see if I can't do it a little bit quicker than I did last time. Not for the sake of rushing, but for the sake of having figured out a technique last time and trying to replicate it. Alrighty. Right, and we are away. So this shouldn't take too long. Alright, we'll just give him the quick spin and check. Yep, we are definitely getting engagement there. So happy days. We're back in action, we have 4-wheel drive, we can get around the place. So I'll just pack this stuff away, get on to the next job. So today's little snippet of technology is going to be having a look at the weather station that I talked about yesterday. You know, being in Canberra, seeing all the flags, kind of reminded me that mine's a little worse for wear and it's time to update it, throw a new one on there. They don't seem to last terribly long up here, and unfortunately I didn't order both flags at the same time, so the other one's still coming. But we'll climb up there, we'll have a look at that weather station, and I'll jump onto the computer a little while later and so this is a WeatherFlow Tempest. It's got no moving parts, which makes it reasonably durable and that you can put it into a long-term position, that you don't have to access it very often. So it uses something in the vicinity of the 433 megahertz range to communicate back to the house. Its receiver is connected to the Wi-Fi, which means that we can access this weather station from anywhere in the world. So trying it out like I do with any technology, somewhere close to home, so that if anything does go wrong with it, it's not that far to fix, diagnose and test out. So these flagpoles are mounted up to a set of old Bronco rails from one of the original sets of cattle yards here at Prenty. The yards themselves mostly salvaged from, so the old panels and everything have moved and gone to other places. So I figured that because it was a little bit out of the way, I'd bring a bit of that towards the homestead and have that heritage here. So a Bronco rail is what they used to use for marking cattle, and you'd rope your calf and you come up alongside, put your rope through the middle and you pull them in, and then they get up against the panel and then you can mark and brand them. Things have changed a little bit these days and we use a lot better and lower stress handling facilities, which we're going to show you as we get into handling cattle. Jumping in here to show you what we get out of the weather system, the outputs. What it is an app on my phone, but you can also access it through the internet. The link's going to be down below, so you can have a look at the weather station, see what weather we've got up here. I'll put in the link for the unit itself. It's not sponsored or anything. I've just bought one of these because I'd read about them and thought that would be something interesting to try, considering we've been using a Davis Vantage View that's not internet connected. So you have to physically be here to check the data. And an additional unit to do that will cost a little bit. And I thought, let's try a no moving part system. And it means that I could always install it somewhere else on the station so we could have that insight. So jumping into it, this is, like I said, the WeatherFlow Tempest, and it's giving us our direct now temperature. It's, almost 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and yeah, it's showing us what sort of weather we've got. And as we go down here, it'll show us our predicted weather and temperatures throughout the night. It'll give you the breakdown for each day as you go. It gives you an accurate forecast, or a close to accurate forecast for here, because what they do is they feed the data from this unit into their forecast system, and the more data you collect, the more accurate the whole system becomes. We jump into the history here. One of the things I like, and never thought that I would like, is the lightning detection. I haven't had anything today and nothing this week, but last week is where we had the rain and a thunderstorm, and the lightning detection is what actually alerted me while I was in Canberra to the fact that we had a thunderstorm coming in. So I got the notification, it showed up on my watch. I jumped into the the camera system and had a look at Bullock, and it was a surprise. There was, water everywhere, because the weather wasn't forecast to hit any of these areas, and it was much welcomed. It's only been in for about 3 weeks. This is what we've collected in data. It's giving us our wind speed. Now I've got the wind speed in knots because that's useful for us in flying. And I think that looking at the solar radiation is kind of interesting, considering we've been having a look at our power plant, and it could help us, forecast what sort of output we're going to have. This isn't the station map. This is just a WeatherFlow stations map, but it'll give you a bit of an idea of where I am and where we fit into the scale of things. I'll dive deeper into the station itself, a little bit of history, and go into the map. Someone mentioned in the comments that they'd like to see where we are, what we're flying around, and a few landmarks. But the biggest one for us is Lake Carnegie here and Lake Wells. You can see that we've got a little bit of distance between us and Wiluna. So classic Australia, it's not where are you from, it's what are you near. And Wiluna is a 299 kilometre drive to the post office. Down to Laverton is a 265 kilometre drive. Now, Laverton has a bit of an advantage. There's a pub. We've also got bitumen that comes up to the edge here of the Cosmo Newbury Reserve. So that makes it a nice drive. Eventually, that track through there, all the way through to Winton in Queensland, will be bitumised, which is going to be pretty amazing, and it means that you'll have better access to some of these adventurous tracks out the back here. Yeah, the question came up about our offtake with our cattle, and we'll dive into that when we get into the cattle side of things. But I'm not a standalone operation. Down in Esperance, out at Cascade, is where I'm originally from. And so my brothers, they operate the farm Clare Downs down there. So there's roughly 1,050 kilometres between the two operations. And what we do is wean cattle off from here down to Esperance. So they get off mum, and that means that mum's got less pressure on her, and she can have a little bit of a break for a while going into these warmer periods of the year. So our timing for our livestock is generally around the hotter times of the year, where we get the maximum capture due to the method that we use for mustering, which is using the self-mustering yards. And we've got a lot to cover with how we do it
and the specifics of our yards, but it's well and truly worth it, because that is one of the biggest changes we made to this operation, and it has had the biggest impact.
So I'd asked for a little bit of feedback on some of the content, and someone had said, you know, a little bit about the cattle work and the power plant that we have here. So the cattle work's going to come when it comes down to cattle work, so that might be a couple of months away before we get really stuck into it, but we'll surely have a reasonable amount of content there. What I can show you at the moment, because I am at home, is the power plant. So I'll just do a bit of a walk around on that and explain what we've got happening. The original power plant for Prenty was located over there in that little shed. So there's the genset shed, and it started out on a 32 volt system. Then around 2007, I believe, there was an initiative to add 24 power to everywhere. So a full 240 volt, 24/7 system. And that was this initial part that was added in. Now these are tracking solar panels. Now they're getting a bit, so some of them are broken. Their glycol systems have broken down, but we've put in digital tracking systems, and they'll work most of the time, except for that one got blown off or knocked off by a cow. So this system is actually quite small compared to what you could be making these days. We've got good quality panels, but they're only 80 watt rated. So in the future I am looking at using these trackers and putting in high capacity panels. The backup system is this Perkins genset. Pretty good setup, very reliable. The exhaust has been plumbed to outside, and we've set up the air intake to come from outside so it stops it choking. So the original power system for the 24 power was based in this room. And as you can see, it's a nice big Magnum inverter. And there was a partition here that had you into some older batteries, ones that you used to have to top up every month with quality water. So our first upgrade to the system that was here was to add this shipping container worth of panels and fixed lock, so they would be pumping into the system. These are the original batteries, nice and heavy, and you would top them up with electrolyte every month. So that was a good monthly check, go over the batteries. There's other batteries here, and we'll see more of them. A little bit windy as we pop into here. Got our laser level for whenever we're doing construction work, or the rehydration pilot that I did. I can jump to that in a later episode to show you what we did there. But we've got ex-Telstra batteries here, which we'd plumbed into the system to give ourselves a little bit more life out of the old setup. The solar panels use these ARL Coolmax units to pump in. And because our system is 120 volt, it's hard to come across any equipment that is still supported, as everything is switching over to low voltage DC. So I've got those two controllers there. All these 300 watt panels are running into. So we've got another container that we've got a second wall just to take a bit of the sting out of it with. Bit of insulation on the wall, and we've got our batteries. So these are 12 volt batteries. This room needs climate control just to give it a little bit more life. And we've got another Coolmax unit here, and you can see how much heat is pumping into the system. And you can see it's quite warm in here. So as soon as you go over 25 degrees, you start to lose efficiency on your charge controllers and then also on your inverters. So it's high on the priority list to install that aircon. So I hope that covers a bit of the power plant for you. I've got a few ideas about how I'm going to upgrade this when we make a few changes, because in typical fashion there has been some shortcuts taken here with electrical, but as we find them we fix it. That's what you've got to do to make sure everything stays safe. It's hard work, costs a bit, but you know, the saying goes, job's worth doing, do it right the first time. Yeah, that kind of explains the broken down dome shelter that you see over there. I took a few shortcuts and it's cost me. So that sort of wraps this up. We'll see what other jobs we got.